Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and I'm here today with the president of Lincoln Winwater and client of Grindstone, Eric Leatherman. Dude, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
This is exciting. I'm excited to kind of share your story. We talked a little bit yesterday, and this is what kind of sparked it, is the fact that, you have an awesome story of building a company from nothing to extremely successful, and you've had some more recent growth opportunities as well. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about your childhood, what you were like as a kid. What was your upbringing like?
Pretty traditional family. I had a rough relationship with my parents. I think they were good parents. I mean, the best parents now, but as a kid, I was kind of a hellraiser, a little bit hard to keep a hold of. And they struggled a lot. Like we bashed heads a lot. And it was a good upbringing, like solid, like they're good parents.
Yeah. What caused you to bash heads a lot? Just,
I think
you were super independent.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. I didn't like anybody telling me what to do from an early age, and I liked, I like to have fun, and I still do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
From a upbringing standpoint, I was a solid C student. Going through school, I would not do any homework. I mean, from the first time they give you homework in third grade, I never did it. I remember staying in at recess in third grade because I wasn't doing my homework, but I was able to skate by, passing the tests, getting good grades on that stuff. But yeah, solid C student.
Wait, so you were good enough to just take the tests without having to do a lot of studying? So
yeah, I mean,
this is a waste of my time.
Yeah, I listened in class. I mean, that's really the story of my upbringing from elementary school through high school is high school for me was more of a social experience than it was an educational one. I was pretty good friends with the teachers, and I had, I wasn't quote unquote one of the popular kids, but I seemed to get along with everybody. And yeah, it was fun for me to go to high school because it was just, I got to see everybody and talk to everybody there. So that was,
yeah. And that so you've always been that social character throughout your whole life?
Yeah. I've always felt like I've kind of had an old soul. I identified more with teachers and authority figures. They seemed to know more about what's going on. They could speak more intelligently. They had a perspective that I never, that I wasn't used to. And so I was interested in, gleaning as much information from those authority figures as I could about adult life, because, I wanted to be an adult from a really early age.
How young are you talking?
I mean, I wanted to be done with school in elementary school.
Really?
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to be out in the world, doing adult stuff.
So who did you look up to at that point? Who are your not mentors at that? You probably know what that word meant at that point, but no. Who are the people you looked up to even as a young kid?
I don't really it's my parents, right? My dad was a machinist. He actually started a company when I was 12 years old. And he poured his life and soul into that company. And it took him to the brink, financially, I think emotionally. And I saw the toll that it took on him in my formative years, going through junior high school. I saw the toll that it took on him. And I always told myself, I'm never going to own a company.
Right.
I am not going to do that.
How did that make you feel when you were a kid? What were some of the emotions you were feeling watching your dad's, was he struggling at that point? You said it was taking him to the brink.
Well, he was doing everything. And, when you own a company, you you're responsible for everything, right? You're responsible for the payroll. You're responsible for the insurance plan. You're responsible for answering the phone. You know how it is.
Right.
Everything falls on your shoulders. And that's where I saw, it was just the sheer amount of time that he put in. I mean, he was working probably 18-hour days, Monday through Friday. He was working 12 to 13-hour days on Saturday, and after church on Sundays he would go in and check the machines, as we used to say. But he started that business out of our garage. So and he grew it, and he was doing really well. And manufacturing in this country is kind of taken a hit. And he sold the business or got out of the business I think right after I started Winwater. So
okay, so just like within the last 15 years then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but he ran that business for close to 15 years, I think.
Have you read the book The E-Myth by chance?
No.
So the E-Myth talks about the difference between owning a company and owning a job, and like a lot of people do, and what I've seen a lot of people do from a solopreneur standpoint. Was he the only one that worked there, or did he have employees as well?
He had employees.
He had employees too. So a lot of what people do is they'll get started in work, and they will become the solopreneur, and they will be afraid to delegate things to other people because they're just so afraid of what would happen if they do that. But then they end up taking all of that on. Yes, they're responsible for it,
right?
But they're also doing it all. Like, you can be responsible for something and not be the one actually physically doing the action. Yeah. And that's been a really big eye-opening thing for me to see, just like the difference between people like yourself who, like, I've worked with you just through Grindstone and stuff, and seeing how you delegate to your people and like have the utmost trust in them. That's huge. How did you go about, before we get into that, I guess I should ask, like, what was your kind of spark to fire moment? This show's called Spark to Fire.
Sure. Yeah.
We talk about, the moment that you take your career or your jobs that you were kind of like going up to until like you take a point and you are switching your life and you're going a very specific path and you're on it. And that's the path you're on today. So what was the moment you knew you were going to have that tipping point?
If you're gonna title this podcast, you should call it The Reluctant Entrepreneur. Because my spark to fire moment was the moment that I wrote the check for the stock in my company. So that initial investment, when you're capitalizing a company, you're putting cash in.
Yeah.
I mortgaged my house. I took a personal loan out on the vehicle that I owned, and the capitalization I needed, I got the last $5,000 on a credit card cash advance at 29% interest.
Oh,
so
ouch.
Like,
so on that $5,000.
What's that?
On that 5,000 at 29%?
5,000 at 29%.
That adds up really quick.
Yeah, it does. So, my spark to fire moment is $1,000 worth of payments that I had to make on loans that kind of like pushed me,
right.
Like, failure was not an option, because if the company fails, the bank's going to want their money back. Like,
yeah, they're not going to stop looking for you.
Yeah.
So what did you do? So you had all of this debt now incurred, and you obviously mortgaged your home, got a bigger loan, right? Just so you could even get in the game at Win.
Yep.
And walk people through like a quick 2-minute synopsis of how the Win structure works, just so they can get some context for this.
Right. So Win Supply is a giant, investment company. They're a business partner in more than 600 C corporations nationwide. So it's not a franchise system. It's not branches. It's an extremely bottom up organization. So Wind Supply is my business partner. They own 51% of Lincoln Winwater. And they provide all the stuff that I saw my dad struggle with. So when I told myself I was never going to be a business owner, I still wasn't going to be a business owner the day before I wrote the check for Lincoln Winwater.
What were you just like having this secondhand hesitation where you're like, were you like out of body at that point where you're like, okay, well, this part of me wants to do this? I mean, what were you thinking?
So
at that time,
I'll go back a little bit, right? Yeah. I went to school for aviation. I loved going flying. I love flying. So I went and did that. I didn't like going to class. So I stopped going to class, and you know what? You can't college, you got to go to class, right? So I dropped out of college, moved back to Nebraska.
What were your parents thinking at this time?
Yeah.
Were they just like...
I mean, they're good parents, but like I was not psychologically developed as a 21-year-old, right? So I asked them to move in with, I'm like, hey, Mom and Dad, can I move back home? They're like, yeah, you can move back home, but we're going to charge you rent. And so I was like, well, screw that. Yeah, if you're gonna charge me rent, I'm gonna go, get an apartment with some buddies,
Right.
and so I moved back to Nebraska on a Saturday. I got the Sunday paper. I went around and applied to 7 different jobs on Monday, and Monday afternoon there was a message on my machine when I got back home because I didn't have a cell phone then, from Lincoln Windustrial, offering me a job as a delivery driver.
Mm-hmm.
And, being a 21-year-old kid with no job and rent payments to make, I showed up Tuesday morning at 8:00, and that was the beginning of it.
Wow.
And, I was a delivery driver for them for a year. People got fired or quit or moved up, and I moved up too. And I worked in the warehouse. I did counter sales, inside sales. And then my boss at the time, and one of my best bosses I've ever had, she saw more in me than I saw in myself. So this opportunity came up for Waterworks in Lincoln, and I didn't know anything about the industry. I knew about Win's pattern management system that they had because I'd been part of the Windustrial for the last 5 years or so.
Pattern management is just their operating system for a
Yeah,
company.
how they think. Here's the financial metrics that we want.
Right.
Here's how you serve customers. It's basically all the mistakes that other entrepreneurs have made in book form. Like, here, don't do this. Do this. Yeah. So, McDonald's practices pattern management. You're going to get the same cup of coffee,
right,
no matter where you go.
That's really interesting. I want to look into that concept because we talk about process a lot at Grindstone, and we're always trying to improve our process and make sure it's repeatable. But I've never heard that terminology. So
yeah. So Win Supply Inc. is a 51% equity partner in our company. They provide all that process management stuff. They don't tell you how to go to market. Like, you choose your own products, your own lines, who you buy from, who you hire, who you fire, all that stuff. So
yeah.
They're just a silent business partner almost.
Yeah. So you go through Windustrial, you learn about the systems, you learn about the culture there, and then during the most horrible time seemingly to start a business during the recession of 07, 08, you decide it's a great idea to start your own company. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
and this is fast forwarding back again to when you wrote that check.
Right. Absolutely. So, 07, everything was great. Everybody's numbers were up. Great time to start a business. I write a check for, more than I'm making a year, and and the debt payments that go with it. And so we get started, and we just start grinding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going out, pounding the pavement, telling people what we're about. And I started it with 2 other guys, and we had some success the first couple months, and then the spring of 08, things got bad in the housing market. Debt dried up, the ability to get debt, lending stopped. Mm-hmm. There was a huge contraction in the market, and it was a struggle, but it was actually, I jokingly say, it's the best time to start a business right during a recession. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, but it really was the best time to start a business. Our overhead was low. There was market share to be gained. Mm-hmm. And the best part is our competition didn't know we were taking it.
Right.
Because people are inherently kind of look to the easy reason why their business is declining. And so in a recession, our competitor sales guys could just, they're saying to their bosses, well,
it's a
recession. The economy's bad. And other, the district managers are saying to the head honchos, well, the economy's down. Yeah, we're down 30-40%. Right. What they didn't know is I was responsible for 10 to 20% of that
the
decline.
Carnage.
Yeah, the carnage. So
that's great. Yeah, I think, and there's probably a lot of that going on right now with COVID, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
With just unrest in the nation and COVID, the whole situation as it comes back up and as it continues to build until November, as it will.
Right.
There'll be more and more media that's going to push the markets down, I believe, just because of. It's an election year.
Sure.
It's going to be a huge part of it, right? And obviously, it's a real pandemic, but it's being amplified dramatically which is really causing a lot of those results of people being able to blame a pandemic for something.
Right. But the thing I learned as a young entrepreneur is that there's things you can control and there's things you can't. And when something like this happens, I have no control over, what's happening nationally or anything like that. But I do have control over what I do on a day-to-day basis and what my team does on a day-to-day basis. In 08, 09, our focus was solely on building relationships and strengthening those relationships. It wasn't necessarily about sales. It wasn't about that. It was like, hey, we need to get to know these guys. We need to get to know what their problems are. We need to figure out how we can solve them, because eventually it's going to come back. It always does.
Right.
And if we have stronger relationships with these guys during this downturn, when it comes back, we're going to build a moat around our book of business that our competitors are not going to be able to get into.
Yeah, that's huge. I actually just made a post about that yesterday, talking about even if it's small projects, and I'm sure you guys weren't afraid to get in on small projects too, because you have so much trust in your team that you're capable of creating lifetime customers.
Right.
Like that's where it's at, because eventually that company that, that has all that market share, when they start getting lazy on their customer service or on their experience or even on their lack of innovation, they're going to start lagging. And when there's that little bit of doubt where the client's like, I'm going to go just try this, one thing over here.
Yep.
It'll be a small piece of business, won't even affect this agency or this supplier, but we're just going to try one thing with them. Like they order fittings from you would be a good example.
Right.
Really small fittings.
Yep.
That'd be a good example of something where you were able to snag market share over a 5-year window.
Right.
So talk a little bit more about, if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what else would you say? Like from 10 years ago, even?
It took me a while. I'd never been in a management supervisory position before. So there was a moment in time for me where I learned how to delegate. And the concept that kind of got me to that point is good enough. Is it good enough for the customer? Because, it wasn't good enough for me. I have pretty high standards, right? Like I want it to be perfect, perfection, but the customer's standards were a lot lower than mine. And if I could delegate something to somebody and it was good enough for the customer, then I would learn to let go of that. And it took a while to come to that realization that, it's good enough and it's actually better than the customer's used to. So the customer sees it as an improvement. It's not as good as I would have done it.
Yeah.
But
it's the middle bar graph though in between those two, right?
You have to create space for people to operate in, like your subordinates to operate in, because if you try to, it's like the goldfish in a bowl theory, right? Like if you have them in a really small bowl, they're always going to be that size. But if you give them the space to roam, to make mistakes, to operate in, like they're going to grow into that. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but they're at least going to build their skill set.
Right. Yeah. And they're going to build up their skills internally. And I mean, what's one thing you do? Like, do you ever worry about people leaving, anything like that when you're investing in them?
Yeah, but, I think most people want to see the path, right? They want to see the path forward. They want to know where they can go, where they can get to. So I've always tried to be pretty clear about, sharing what I see for people. I call myself the reluctant entrepreneur because somebody saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Like they saw that I had a set of skills that would be useful in this realm. And
what did they say specifically? Do you remember?
I mean,
because I remember when somebody told me that, so I'll share that after I hear yours. But I remember that moment for me too.
So my boss at the time, she, I'd been there like less than a year, and as a delivery driver, and she was like, we're just happy to have you for as long as we have you because you're better than this. And I'm like,
what?
I'm like, what?
What are you saying?
Well, I was working in the warehouse, and and as a driver, and she's like, you're better than this. You're better than all this stuff. And I'm like, I was a 21-year-old kid there. Nobody'd ever
And this is at 21 when she said this?
Yeah.
Really?
So
that's so interesting. You're going to love my story then too.
I mean, that's pretty much it. Like from that point on, I'm like, I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I wonder how many other people, around do, because I feel like a fraud. Even to this day,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to be found out as not knowing what I'm doing because
someone's going to root around.
Yeah. Like
look at the books.
Don't look too hard because I'm still trying to figure this out. Right. But, I've kind of come to the realization, and I've had enough, you have enough people tell you like, oh, you're doing well, you're successful. You have a company that's doing, millions of dollars in revenue and has, 20 employees, and,
right.
The numbers don't lie. Like the numbers are there, but I still feel like a fake.
Yeah. So what do you think causes that?
I don't know.
I know it's a thing. Feel it all the time.
Yeah.
Because the second you get, I'm sure if you're like this too, like you get compliments on that, and then you have this subconscious voice in your mind, like I haven't done anything yet. Because that happens to me a lot. Like I feel that way. Like if there's some sort of thing like, oh, you're crushing it out there, I'm like, dude, we are literally not even like I feel like we're in baby phase.
Right.
And granted, we're only 2 years in, so we are on most scales, but it's interesting.
I think that most successful people have something that drives them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's it, but it's certainly it for me.
Yeah.
That it's the guilt, it's the worry that I'm not good enough, and that so I have to keep pushing and being better. And is $2 million good enough? Well, no, because there's 4 million. Is 4 million good enough? No, there's 10. Is 10 million good enough?
Right.
Well, no, we did 10, like 15, 20, let's 30, like let's go.
Yeah.
It's never gonna be
right.
It's never gonna be enough. I realize that.
Yeah.
But that's a driving force.
That's the chase.
Right.
Right. And then along the way, you said something. I want to tell this story first, but you said something about how you were going to like create several millionaires, and that's something that you want to do. So I'll talk about that. But it's funny that both of our bosses were females too. So Sandy, in my old job, she walked over. I was doing customer support for an irrigation company, and she walks over and she's like, "So, what are you gonna do after this?" And this is like my 18th month at the job. Like at that point, like I looked at her, I'm like, am I getting fired right now? Like I didn't know what to think.
They found me out.
I'm like, yeah, basically imposter syndrome, right? Like they found me out. So I looked at her, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm gonna probably go work under Isaac. I want Isaac's job. She's like, no, you don't. I'm like, yes, I do. And she just like said the same thing, like, you're not, she said this exactly, and I'm just going to take it verbatim from her. She's like, you're not supposed to work in a place like this. You're supposed to run a place like this. No one had ever told me that. Family, no one, ever. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what to do with that, right?
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, this is a funny thing, like I remember about that from that moment forward. I think she saw me when we were on customer support calls. I would have like the Intelligent Investor open in like a mini bar on my screen. So like imagine you have a window that's 2 inches big on your screen. You're supposed to be working and doing your job, but you're like reading Benjamin Graham at work. And I think she saw that a couple times because she could look on our computers and she's like, you're not supposed to be here. But I think that was one of the moments. But so talk about you've grown Winwater from nothing, literally not a company. You mortgaged your home to now doing over 20 million in revenue. First of all, that's amazing. That's incredible. And got to give you credit where credit is due. And that's only over the course of 13 years. So what is your next big push now that you've got a new opportunity with Win?
So because of the imposter syndrome, I have identified as one of those people that didn't realize what they had within them. Mm-hmm. And part of having 20 employees is seeing them from that higher level and seeing what they can be capable of and trying to maximize everybody's potential,
right? And
into the pinnacle of what they can be. And so with Win now, I've got another opportunity to help 20 plus other entrepreneurs that they're all in various stages of running wind supply companies, but I get to help them create wealth for themselves, for their families, for not just like enough wealth just for them, but to change the course of their lives and their children's lives, financial freedom for all of them. And I have a chance to help them get to that point. And the mentors that I've had, Jill, when she said that to me, you're too good for this or something like that. I want to be that person that is pushing these people to their peak, peak potential, because I think a lot of people, they don't see it for themselves. And it takes a little bit of a shock sometimes to get people to back up and step out of the situation. I've heard it said a lot of times, are you working in the business or on the business? And a lot of times people are working in the business. Mm-hmm. And so they need somebody to come in and help them work on the business. And that's going to be what my new role is at WinSupply.
That's really cool. We talk a lot about that at an entrepreneur group that I'm involved with one of my mentors. And we have that conversation basically every meeting. So it's 12 times a year having that conversation of how much are you working on the business versus in the business, and what do you like? And then they do the Stephen Covey square, right? Urgent and important, urgent, not important, and forcing yourselves into that column where you can focus on the important and less urgent tasks. That's going to be where I continue to hopefully grow within my role here. But like, you've gotten to the point to where you're still running Lincoln Winwater, and now you're also going to be mentoring these people. So like, what's your day-to-day going to be like? Just asking questions and seeing how you can help and provide value?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, analyzing the company, but more importantly, it's going to be getting to know the leaders. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge relationship guy, and even in the employees that I have already, it's getting to know them, getting to know, what their life's about, where they want to be in life. I mean, when I do employee reviews, it's where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? Is it even with our company? If it's not, like, I can help you, like, let's build your skill set so that you're ready for that next big thing. Right. Even if it's not here, I just want to help people. Like, that's what it is. I think hopefully that's my legacy, and I'm not on my way out, I hope, or anything yet. Right. But I still consider myself a young guy, even though I'm not I guess I'm not a young guy anymore.
You were definitely a young guy. You were definitely a young dude.
But that's what I want my legacy to be. Is I want to look and I want to create 50 millionaires in my lifetime, or help people achieve that wealth for themselves.
I think you're absolutely going to be able to do that, because the first thing is doing it yourself, right? Right. I mean, you have to make it for yourself, and I think that's really cool that Win saw that, and they're specifically cherry picking you to go lead these other presidents. I mean, being in charge of 24 presidents is I think it was like over 20 presidents, right?
Yeah, I mean and
like, you're helping mentor them and guide them.
Right. So I got to stop you, because the beauty of Win is I'm not their boss, right? Yeah, I'm on the board of directors. Each company has its own board of directors, and I'm there to help them. It's not a top-down organization. It's, we're side by side. Like, they've got to do the day-to-day work, but WinSupply is truly a business partner in each one of these individual companies. Mm-hmm. So it's not, it's not a big national firm. They're not making national edicts. It's always about what's best in that local market. So what's best in Lincoln is completely different than what's best in New York City. Right. Especially now, like when you look at the COVID-19 map, there's so many different colors all over the country. When you break it down county by county, mm-hmm. you got to do what's best for your local market.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Because if you were to stop work completely in Nebraska, it wouldn't, versus stopping work completely or stopping supply completely in New York, it's two different things. Right. Two huge different areas. So I want to bring the conversation a little bit back to you. What do you do in the morning to kind of prepare yourself for the day? What are some of your routines? I know there's a certain cereal involved, and we need to also dig into that story.
Oh my gosh. So like, I honestly, the weird thing is I don't eat breakfast. Okay. I guess I was intermittently fasting before intermittently fasting was cool.
Yeah, I do that now. So that's really funny you say that. Yeah.
But yeah, during the week I don't eat breakfast. Again, imposter syndrome. I don't have, like, I suck.
What do you mean?
I'm a horrible human being. Like, I'm lazy. Like, I wake up at the last possible minute to get to work. And I drink too much coffee, and I got a lot of vices. So, but yeah, there's not a routine. Like, I'm a big planner though. Like my day is usually planned out weeks, months ahead of time. I live and die by that calendar.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, the breakfast thing though on the weekends, man, like there's nothing better on Saturday morning than sleeping until like, oh, I wish I could sleep in anymore, but
Right.
like sleeping until 8 o'clock, waking up, having a cup of coffee, grabbing a bowl of Cinnamon Life,
Cinnamon Life. So talk about what that means to you. There's certain things in our childhood that really trigger a certain memory and a certain thought. Talk about what Cinnamon Life specifically means for you.
Okay, so my parents, like I don't know if we were poor. I mean, we never really wanted for anything, but like we clipped coupons. Like my mom clipped coupons, and I would ask for Cinnamon Life all the time. Like I don't know what, like it's like crack to me. Like I had it once. Maybe I had it once at a friend's house, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever.
Why do I not have
and
this all,
so I'm
all
like,
the time?
Mom, can you buy Cinnamon Life? She's like, yeah, we'll go to the store and check it out. And she'd come home with Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and I'd be like, Mom, this is not Cinnamon Life. She's like, well, I had a coupon for it. It's pretty much the same thing. I'm like, but it's not the same thing. So we rarely had Cinnamon Life in our cupboard growing up. And, when I started this company, I got married,
right.
My wife was going to the store. I would buy it whenever I would see it at the store because I always wanted it in the cupboard. And I told her one time, I said, please, can we just like, I know that you're doing the grocery shopping right now, but can you just please always make sure there's 2 boxes of Cinnamon Life? Because if I get into that last box and there's not enough for the bowl, I'm gonna need to fill that bowl up with the next box. So
it's I'm going to the grocery store.
I need 2 boxes. So I feel like I knew I made it in life when I can look in my pantry and always have 2 boxes of Cinnamon Life in there.
I love that.
So
yeah, but that's the other side of the fulfilling thing, because there's chasing money and then there's chasing fulfillment, right? You're going to be fulfilled in like your passions in like helping people, and money obviously comes as a result of that. But to me, it seems like you're somebody that really truly just wants to build up people, and that's the money just happens to follow.
I mean, the money is kind of the scorecard, but it's the scorecard for everybody else. It's not the scorecard for me. I mean, the scorecard for me is how many people can I help get more money? I've have a guy that's working out in Colorado Springs right now, running a highly successful company out there. We've just started another company over in the Quad Cities, a Winwater over there. So I've got a couple guys. We've helped with interns at the University of Nebraska Kearney. We've had interns that are running companies out there. In the last, I'm 40 years old. In the last 10 years, I've been able to help so many people kind of find that spirit of opportunity within Wind Supply that I'm just really looking forward to getting to 40 more, 50 more, whatever the number is.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that the parent company allows you to think so entrepreneurially, like that's the massive part of it. What causes you to think that way specifically with, I want to create millionaires, I want to create wealth for other people? What stemmed that for you?
For me, so in 2006, right before I started this company, I got a brochure in the mail from Beechcraft Aviation, and I had my pilot's license at the time, but I hadn't flown in 6 years because it's an expensive hobby.
Right.
And the postcard said, "Isn't it about time?" And I'm like, huh. Like I'm poor, like I'm dirt poor still at this time.
And this is how old?
I was 26.
26.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, it kind of is about time. Like I should do something. Like I need to figure out a way to get back into flying. And for me, the business was a vehicle to get back into flying. Like I wanted to have enough disposable income that I could go out and fly.
Yeah.
And it was about time.
They got me.
Yeah, they got me.
Marketing.
Yeah. But it's insidious, right? Like I still think about that, 14 years later, and it's part of what what drives me.
Yeah, that's huge though. That little flyer triggered a whole set of events for you.
Right.
put you on a specific
Yeah.
path going to chase that down. And so now you do fly today.
Yes, I do.
Right?
Yes, I actually have my own airplane, so
Yeah.
that's you know, a life goal achieved. And you know, I've been fortunate enough, you know, to have set several life goals, and I've been able to reach every single one that I've got. And the company's the vehicle for that, you know, but building up other people has been the vehicle for that. I remember talking to my boss after I'd been in the company for a year or 2 years, and I was like, you know what, we're always going to be a $2 million company, because I cannot work any harder. Like, I just can't. Like, I'm already working, you know, 16, 18 hours a day. Is like, I can't. This company's always going to be $2 million. And, you know, she was like, and you know what, you keep doing the right things enough, and it'll happen. And you just keep educating those people underneath you, and pretty soon they're going to be as successful as you are. And so now, you know, I just stuck it out, and I started teaching people how to think, not how to work, so they could have the same mentality that I had about how to serve the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a company now of a bunch of people that know how to think, I think, in the right way.
That's awesome. Wow. So that little mindset shift allowed you to, and that along with all the little you know, deposits you've been making with people, you know, the seeds that you've been planting with the people, and over time that stuff just starts to snowball.
Yeah.
When did it really start picking up for you? Like, when was the moment where, you know, you were hitting that 2, 3, 4 up to like 20? I mean, that's a huge jump from that point.
Yeah. I think when I could start showing other people what their top end was and getting them to believe in that. I think, you know, it's really happened in the last couple years. I'd say 3 or 4 years where we've had success, you know, turning people out that have worked there and having them go out and run their own companies, like Ben out in Colorado.
Yeah.
And people see that path and they realize that, oh, it is possible. You're not just feeding me a line of crap here.
Right.
Like, it is possible for me to do that. And so success kind of leads to more success.
Right.
And I think that's kind of opened everybody's eyes to what is possible within the company.
I'm a firm believer that that's possible with agencies. Like, a lot of agencies right now they have their central hub, and then they have just like branches, or they have like little satellite offices here and there. But I really do believe that it's possible to do that with the agency model. I actively think about that all the time, of how could we create some sort of an entrepreneurial environment here within that? Because that's what I want. You know, I want to give people that agency and that opportunity to go, you know, build their own thing, because I know what it's done for me.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's changed my life.
It's all about ownership, right? And ownership doesn't have to be financial. It can be, you know, task based or project based. If you have enough people out there that want ownership and want responsibility and want to prove themselves, then they're going to be successful. And you can just keep feeding them. You can keep feeding them that responsibility and let them fail.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's a really interesting point with that. So I think what would be a great way to end this off, Eric, is like, what was the advice you would give to anybody that's looking to start a business today? And secondly, what are 2 books that have changed your life?
Oh man. I think the advice I would give somebody starting a business is that, you know, there's people out there that want to be business owners, and there's people out there that want to be entrepreneurs. And some people are in love with the title of being a business owner, and that's not enough. Like, this is a dirty, hard work. Like, it'll gut you. It'll, you know, if you're not prepared to put the time in and put the work in, save yourself the headache.
Go get a job.
Yeah, go get a job. Like,
Right.
go work for somebody until you're ready to bet it all. Because you know, we've romanticized being a business owner, and I think people look at the results of what's happened to successful people and they think that it's easy. And you know, I've certainly had a lot of people in my life that have been successful that made it look easy, but I know now that it was not easy.
Right.
You know,
We're all struggling.
Right.
And no one talks about it. Right.
Right.
That's the big piece of it is there's a lack of conversation about the fact that no one has their shit figured out.
Yep.
And that's a really big point. What about books? Any books?
I'm gonna turn that against you because it's not books for me, it's movies. And I don't know if
I love it. That's even
generational
that's
thing
completely,
or what.
No, that's completely different. I love that. What movies?
Top Gun.
Top Gun. That makes so much sense knowing your personality though. Like
I mean,
you're funny and like quirky, but yet like you get shit done. And that's it, right?
I want to be Maverick.
Every time.
I mean, from a little kid, like I wanted to be Maverick. Like he was so cool.
Yeah. What else? What other movies?
You know what? I watched a movie recently, and it was the Mr. Rogers movie with Tom Hanks.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from like Mr. Rogers, I remember watching him on TV, and he was just so kind, and he was all about everybody else. And I thought Tom Hanks did a great job in that movie of portraying his personality. Like that's the kind of guy I want to be, right? Like I want to be the helper. You know, I want to help people find success. So, I guess I'm a Tom Hanks and a Tom Cruise fan, I guess.
Got it. It's a good mix of people for sure. That's a good way to wrap it up, man. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks for working with us too. It's been a ton of fun having you as a client and working with you guys and continuing to watch you grow.
Yep. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, it's going to do it for another episode of Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes. Please leave us a review on iTunes, a rating and a written review. That's how we get more people like Eric on the show. That's how we get more eyeballs and ears on this content. If you guys would like, please follow us on Spark to Fire Podcast on Instagram and screenshot this and then share it on your Instagram story and tag at Spark to Fire Podcast. That's how we can get it on Instagram and just continue to grow. So thanks for watching. Thanks for your time and attention, and keep striking.